Hi everyone and welcome back to another YouTube video. My name is Tash and I'm the owner of the sewing pattern brand NH Patterns, and today I'm going to be showing you how to sew the Audrey trousers. It's a new pattern that I've just released. They are a tailored style trouser. They have front and back waist darts to give the shaping. They have pockets. They don't have a waistband though, so they have a waistband facing on the inside to neaten the edges, but there is no waistband there. So the fly is sewn a little bit differently to normal. If you follow me on Instagram, you probably know these have taken me forever to get the fit right, but I'm finally happy with them. I'll leave a link to the pattern in the description box down below should you wish to try it yourself. Please remember before printing your pattern that all of the pattern files are in UK sizing. So even if you're printing the US file, it's still UK sizing. So have a look on the size chart, have a look on the finished garment measurements, and then compare your measurements to that. So I would always recommend sewing a sample first, making any fit adjustments that you need, and then going from there. And I think that's all that you need to know for now, so let's get sewing. To make these trousers, you will need your main fabric, some lightweight fusible interfacing, a 7-inch zipper suitable for the fly, and lastly you will need a hook and bar fastening. For your pattern pieces, you should cut your back trousers as a pair so that you have two mirrored pieces. Make sure to mark your darts and your notches. If you remove your pattern from the fabric like I have, you can always tell your front from your back trouser, as the back is wider and has a much longer crotch point. Like the back trouser, you also need to cut two mirrored front pieces, and you should mark your notches and darts on these pieces too. You can see here how much shorter the crotch is in comparison to the back trouser legs. You should also have a pair of pocket bags and a pair of pocket facing pieces. These should also be two mirrored pieces. Lastly, you should have a fly piece and some interfacing, a shield piece and some interfacing, and a waistband and some interfacing. Remember to cut your waistband on the fold. Before we begin sewing, we'll interface all the pieces that need it, these pieces being the fly, shield and waistband. When applying interfacing, you want to make sure that the glue dots of the interfacing are placed onto the wrong side of the fabric. You should then lay a piece of scrap fabric over the top and press your iron on top of this. Don't drag your iron across the piece, as this can move the interfacing. The heat setting on your iron will totally depend on the fabric and interfacing you are using, so I would recommend doing a couple of samples beforehand. You can see here that my interfacing for my waistband is split into two pieces. This is totally fine. If you need to split your interfacing into smaller pieces, feel free to do so. Just try not to overlap the pieces, as you'll end up with different levels of structure throughout the waistband. Now your pieces are prepped, we will move on to sewing the darts. Take one of your front leg pieces and make sure that you have marked your dart notches and your dart points. Fold your dart with right sides of the fabric together, matching up your dart notches. Then pin in place down to your dart point. Mark the stitch line if you like, then sew from your dart notches down to the point of the dart. When you get to the end, sew one stitch off the edge of the fabric. Take your fabric out of the machine, leaving long tail ends of thread. Then tie your threads in a double knot at the end of the stitching to secure, instead of back stitching. This creates a nice finish at the point of the dart. Now you can sew the second dart on your front leg exactly the same as you did this one. Press both of the darts towards the side seam edge of your trouser. Top stitch along the side of the dart, starting at the top of the trouser and finishing at the dart point. You will be sewing a few millimetres next to your original dart seam. Make sure to sew along the dart on the side that the dart is pressed towards. You will be sewing the dart in place while you do this. Repeat this for both darts. Then sew and top stitch the darts on your other front leg piece. You should now have something that looks like these. Put your front pieces aside for the moment and move on to your back leg pieces. Sew your darts and top stitch the same way you did for the front pieces. Once your back darts are sewn, place your back pieces together with right sides of the fabric facing. Match up your crotch seam and pin. Sew together with a 1 cm seam allowance and then overlock this seam to neaten. Press your seam to one side and then put your back trousers aside till later. We are now going to move on to inserting the pockets to the front of the trousers. Place the right side of one of your pocket facing pieces onto the right side of one of your trouser legs. Pin in place and then stitch together with a 1 cm seam allowance, stopping when you get to your pocket notch. Press your pocket facing and seam allowance away from your trouser leg, then understitch the pocket facing. To do this, sew the seam allowance down onto your pocket facing, a few millimetres away from the seam you just sewed. Make sure to stop understitching when you reach your notch. This stitching will be visible on the inside of your garment, but won't be visible from the outside, and will help to keep your pockets to the inside of the garment when worn. Take one of your pocket bags and lay it on top of your pocket facing with right sides of the fabric together. Match up the curves of the pocket facing and pocket bag the entire way around and pin in place. Starting at the top, sew the pocket bag and facing pieces together the entire way around till you get to the side seam of the trouser. Then overlock this seam. We now need to fold the pocket back into its correct position. First, simply push your entire pocket bag and pocket facing back behind the front of the trouser to the wrong side. Then match up your pocket facing, pocket bag and front trouser leg waist edges. Pin this in place and then do the same for the side seams. Then sew your pocket for your other front trouser leg and fold this back into place as well. Take your shield and fold it lengthways with right sides together. Sew the top edge and the bottom edge both with a 1 cm seam allowance. Trim the seams and then turn it right side out, making sure to press your corners out so they're nice and sharp. Give your shield a good press so that the edges are nice and neat. We will now neaten this edge with bias binding, but if you want to just go ahead and overlock it, that's fine too. Measure your shield, then cut a piece of binding that is 2 cm longer than this. Open one of the folded edges of the binding and give it a gentle press so that you can still see the fold line, but your binding is nice and flat. Then fold each end of the binding to the wrong side by 1 centimetre and press in place. Place the raw edge of the binding, the edge that you unfolded, onto the raw edge of the shield with the right side of the binding facing the right side of the shields. Pin in place. Stitch along the fold line that you pressed open, then press your entire binding away from the shield. Trim your seam slightly and then turn your binding to the other side of the shield so that the wrong side of the binding is facing the shield. Pin in place. I've just trimmed off the little folded back corner here as it was poking out to the right side. You don't need to do this, but I think it's just a little bit neater. The side you just folded back may extend into the shield slightly further than the other side due to trimming the seam allowance. In this case, transfer your pins to the other side, the side you've just sewn, and top stitch along the edge of your binding from this side. As the binding doesn't extend as far on this side, it will just ensure that you sew through both sides of the binding. Now we'll prep the fly. Firstly, overlock the curved edge of your fly. Place your fly onto the crotch of your left trouser leg, left as worn, with right side of the fabric facing and the top edge of the fly and waist of the trouser lining up nicely. Sew in place using a 1 centimetre seam allowance. Then overlock the entire crotch seam. If you're unsure which is the left leg, hold the trouser up to you and check as if you were wearing the trouser. Fold the fly back to the wrong side of the trousers and press in place. Then make a small notch just below your fly. There is a notch here already, but as we overlock the seam, we need to cut into it again. We want to treat the seam above this notch and the seam below it as independent seams. From the top of the fly, mark a point 3.5 centimeters down from the top. I have used an erasable pen to do this, but you could use chalk or a pin. Take your zipper and fold back the top ends of the zipper to the wrong side, so that the zipper stop is right at the top of the zipper. You can do a few hand stitches here if you like to hold it in place. I've just used pins. Place the right side of your zipper onto your fly, matching up the top of the zipper pull with that 3.5 centimeter line we drew in. Your zipper should be placed a few millimeters away from the folded edge of the fly. Pin the side of your zipper furthest away from the fold and closest to the overlocked edge onto the fly, making sure to only pin through the fly and not the trouser leg. Fold your fly away from your trousers. Change your machine foot to a one-sided zipper foot and sew this side of the zipper onto the fly, along the zipper tape. Make sure to keep your zipper pull out of the way. Once you get to the folded over edge of the zipper tape, continue to sew over this but take it slow. You may want to use your hand wheel to avoid snapping your needle. Now we need to sew the other side of the zipper. Zip up your zipper and make a mark 1 centimetre down from the top of your fly. Open your fly out so that it is away from the trouser leg. Then place your shield over the top of the zipper. Your shield should start at the 1 centimetre mark we made, and the overlocked or bound edge of the zipper should lay over the zipper tape on the side that we've not yet sewn. The edge of your shield should match the edge of the zipper tape. Pin your zipper tape to your shield, making sure that only the zipper tape is pinned and not the fly. Open your zipper. With your one-sided foot, sew the shield to the zipper tape alongside the zipper teeth. Again, being careful when you go over the bit at the top that we folded over. Take your other front trouser leg, the right leg, and overlock the entire crotch seam. Then make a notch on the crotch seam the same as we did for your other leg. Fold back the upper portion by 1 centimetre to the wrong side of the trousers and press in place. Go back to your left trouser leg and open out the fly so that you can see the zipper tape that is attached to the shield. Place the folded edge of the right leg seam allowance, still folded back, onto the zipper teeth, sandwiching the zipper teeth between the right trouser leg and the shield. While doing this, also make sure that the waist of the right leg and waist of the left leg are level. Then, starting from the top of where the shield starts, sew all the way down the folded edge of the seam allowance on the right leg until you reach the bottom of the shield. I'm actually sewing from the bottom of the shield to the top, as my machine foot only works one way. Place the left seam, as worn, over the top of the right seam and pin in place. Check where the bottom stop of your zipper finishes and mark just below this with a pin. Then stitch your crotch together along the edge of the left seam. Sew from the bottom of the crotch until you reach the point you marked to show the bottom stopper of your zipper. Overlock the side seams of your front trouser legs and your back trouser legs. Then place your back trousers on top of your front trousers with right sides facing. Sew together at the side seams and then press these seams open.
Don't answer the phone, spending the days on my own, then repeats this for weeks to come. I don't care what I miss, 'cause my life is dismissed. I keep searching for my bliss. It took days to finally start writing songs.
With the right sides of the trousers together, match your crotch seams and pin together. Then pin together the inside leg seam from one ankle to the other. Sew your inside leg seam, overlock to neaten, and then press towards the back of the trouser.
Oh, oh, oh.
We're now going to move on to the waistband facing. Firstly, we need to neaten the bottom edge, and we will do this in the same way we neaten the shield. Remember, you can overlock if you prefer. Fold one of the short edges on the facing back to the wrong side by 1 centimetre. Press in place and then repeat this on the other end. Before you apply your binding, remember that the bottom edge of your waistband facing is the longest edge. As before, press one side of the binding gently, then fold back one end of the binding to the wrong side by 1 centimetre. Start pinning the open edge of your binding to the bottom edge of your waistband facing, being careful not to stretch it. When you get to the other end of the waistband, cut your binding slightly longer than the waistband facing. Fold this edge back to the wrong side of the binding and pin in place. Keep the edges of the waistband you just pressed folded back to the wrong side of the waistband while you do this. Continue to finish the binding on the waistband facing the same as you did with the shield. Turn your trousers so that they are inside out if they aren't already. Unzip your zipper, then place the folded edge of the waistband facing onto the wrong side of the shield. The folded edge of the waistband should be placed in line with the folded edge that extends out just above the shield. You can see in the video that I match up these folded edges and then continue to pin down. Sew this in place alongside your zipper, following the stitch line where we attach the right trouser leg to the zipper. This can get a little bulky, so take it easy here and be gentle. Keeping the wrong side of your waistband facing and the wrong side of your trousers together, follow the facing along the waist of the trousers. When you get to the other side, fold your fly back into place if it's not already. Place the folded edge of the waistband facing onto the fly alongside the zipper. Sew in place, making sure to sew the waistband onto the fly only. Don't sew through your trouser legs. Unfold your fly, then flip your face into the right side of the trousers so that right sides of the trousers and waistband facing are together. Fold your fly back on itself so that the right side of the fly is now against the trouser leg. Your original crotch seam will form the start of where we will be stitching the facing to the waist. Pin the facing to the waist of the trousers the entire way around. On the side with your shield, use your pins to mark directly above your shield. You can then use this as a guide while sewing. Sew your facing to your waist using a 1 cm seam allowance. When you get back to the side with the shield, pull your shield out of the way and continue to sew, following the pins you marked above the shield. Trim your corners, being careful not to cut into your stitching. Then trim your seam allowance. Turn your corners out so your waist facing is on the inside of the trousers and push the corners out to get a nice sharp corner. Then give your waistband facing a good press.
Don't answer the phone, spending the days on my own, then repeats this for weeks to come. I don't care.
Understitch the waistband facing by sewing your seam allowance onto your waistband facing. You won't be able to get right up to the corners, but just go as far as you can. I normally understitch first and then trim my seam allowance, but I did it backwards this time. I actually prefer it the other way.
It's begun. I go, oh, oh, oh.
We now need to top stitch around our fly. From the right side of your trousers, mark out with tailor's chalk where the edge of your fly is. Generally you can feel it from the right side, but if you're struggling, turn your trousers inside out and make a quick paper template that you can follow. I personally mark mine with pins first and then go in with tailor's chalk.
Before keeps repeating my phrases to see if it changes rules. I've gone before, like I couldn't get over, couldn't get over, couldn't get over you. Couldn't get over, couldn't get over, couldn't get over you. I go, oh, 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 I go, oh, oh, oh.
Once you've marked your fly, starting from the waist, top stitch the fly in place from the right side, about ½ centimetre smaller than where you mark the fly to be. Hold your shield out of the way while you do this and sew as far as you can until you reach the shield. Once you reach your shield, do a couple of back stitches and then take your work out the machine. Then put your shield back where it should be and starting from your crotch seam on the right side of your fabric, finish top stitching the fly until you meet your previous stitching line. When doing this part, you'll be sewing through the shield as well as your fly and trousers layers, so it's quite thick. Take it slow so you don't break your needle.
I sing along. I keep pushing myself now, deeper I knew sound more than ever before. Keeps repeating my phrases to see if it changes rules. I've gone before, like I couldn't get over, couldn't get over, couldn't get over you. Couldn't get over.
Now we need to secure our waistband facing. At this point I like to give it another press just to make sure everything is nice and lined up. Then from the inside of your trousers, make sure your facing is lining up correctly. Hand stitch your waistband facing to your centre back and side seams to hold it in place. You only want to sew through the seam allowance, don't sew all the way through to the right side of the trouser.
I sing along. I go, oh, 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 oh,
Hand stitch your hook and bar onto the top of your waist. Start with your bar. Hold it in place and check that when the fly is closed it is completely concealed. Mark your points and then stitch it in place. With your bar you can sew all the way through the layers of the fabric if you wish.
I don't care what I miss, 'cause my life is dismissed. I keep searching for my bliss. It took days to finally start writing songs, but now it's begun. I go
Then put your hook and bar together and fold your fly back into place. Hold the hook where it needs to be and keep hold of it while you unhook and open the trouser. Mark these points and then stitch your hook in place. When sewing the hook, make sure to only stitch through the first layer of the fly. You don't want to see your stitching on the right side.
deeper, I knew sound more than ever before. Keeps repeating my phrases to see if it changes rules I've gone before, like I couldn't get over, couldn't get over, couldn't get over.
The last step is finishing the hems of the trouser legs. There is 2 cm seam allowance here. I'd recommend trying the trousers on before hemming though, and just make sure that they're the length you want. You can hem the trousers however you want, but I'm going to blind hem. I won't go into detail on how to blind hem here as it is a little hard to see on this fabric. But if you want a tutorial on how to blind hem, just leave a comment letting me know and I'll try and film it in the future.
Oh, I sing along, but the look in your eyes when you told me goodbye is the one thing on my mind. It took days to finally start writing songs, but now it's begun. I go oh, 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 oh.
Then that's it, you're done. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and don't forget to like and subscribe for more sewing tutorials and other sewing content. Thanks for watching!